This is outrageous. Harry, control yourself. Control after what you've done. We will discuss this privately.
Prince Harry left the royal family promising financial independence. He stood before cameras declaring he would support his own family, build his own wealth, never need the institution he was abandoning. That promise became the foundation of his exit narrative, the self-sufficient prince who chose freedom over funded privilege. But according to palace insiders who are now breaking their silence, Harry's financial independence was always an illusion propped up by one crucial pillar. King Charles was still paying, quietly, discreetly, funding the California lifestyle Harry claimed to be financing himself. Want to know what palace sources are revealing about Charles's secret support? Insiders claim the king has been allegedly covering security costs, legal fees and lifestyle expenses that Harry's Netflix and book deals could never sustain alone. That Harry's declarations of independence were theatrical performance while his father quietly funded the reality. And now, according to those close to the king, Charles has made a decision that will allegedly shatter Harry's entire financial foundation. He is cutting off all support, completely, immediately, permanently. This is not about punishment. Sources suggest this is about Charles finally accepting that continuing to enable Harry's attacks while secretly funding his lifestyle makes the king complicit in his own institution's destruction. And Harry, according to insiders, is shocked, not just by the financial cutoff, but by the recognition that his independence was always a lie his father allowed him to believe while paying the bills Harry could never actually cover himself. To understand how Harry reached this moment of financial crisis, you need to go back to how he has really been living since leaving royal life. Long before the Netflix deal, long before the book advance, Harry made promises about self-sufficiency that people close to his financial situation claim were never realistic. But here's what most people don't know. According to sources familiar with Harry's actual expenses versus income, the numbers never added up from the beginning. The Montecito mansion required massive mortgage payments that exceeded what any legitimate income stream could justify. The private security Harry demanded cost hundreds of thousands annually with no end in sight. The legal battles against tabloids consumed millions in fees, with cases multiplying faster than settlements arrived. The lifestyle that mirrored royal luxury without royal duties demanded resources Harry's sporadic income could not possibly provide. Word from palace insiders suggests Charles saw this mathematical impossibility early. He allegedly recognized that Harry would either have to dramatically reduce his lifestyle or find financial support somewhere. And rather than watch his son struggle publicly or accept money from questionable sources, Charles reportedly made a decision that would haunt their relationship. He would quietly continue providing financial support while allowing Harry to maintain the fiction of independence. People familiar with how this arrangement allegedly worked describe it as Charles protecting Harry from himself. The king would cover the expenses Harry could not afford, security costs that drained accounts faster than income replenished them, legal fees that multiplied beyond any reasonable calculation, emergency funds when California ventures failed to generate expected income. And according to sources, Charles did this all quietly, through channels that allowed Harry to claim self-sufficiency publicly, while being propped up privately by the very institution he was publicly attacking. Those close to Charles claim he viewed this as paternal duty above all else, that a father supports his children even when they publicly attack him, even when they reject everything he represents, even when continuing that support enables behavior Charles finds deeply painful and personally devastating. But insiders suggest Charles also believed Harry would eventually recognize the unsustainability of his choices. That reality would force maturity. That financial pressure would create wisdom. Instead, according to sources, Harry allegedly interpreted his father's quiet support as confirmation that he could sustain his California lifestyle indefinitely without consequence, that the money would always be there regardless of what he said or did. That independence was something he had already achieved rather than a performance his father was funding behind the scenes.
This is where the story shifts from quiet support to devastating betrayal that changed everything. So when did Charles decide to stop funding Harry's independence illusion? According to sources close to the king, the decision came after Harry's latest legal victory against a tabloid. Want to know why a legal win triggered financial cutoff? Insiders claim Charles watched Harry celebrate defeating a media outlet in court, watched him claim vindication for years of legal battle, watched him position himself as champion of privacy and accountability, who had been proven right all along. And then, according to palace sources, Charles received the legal bill. Millions. For a case that awarded Harry minimal damages. for a victory that cost exponentially more than it achieved, for a legal crusade that Harry allegedly funded with money Charles had been quietly providing while Harry attacked the institution Charles leads and will defend until his death. People close to the king describe a moment of painful clarity that transformed their relationship forever. Charles had been enabling Harry's war against the tabloids by secretly paying the legal costs. He had been funding Harry's attacks on the royal family by covering expenses Harry could not manage alone. He had been subsidizing his own son's campaign to damage the monarchy. And according to sources, Charles recognized that continuing this support was not protecting Harry from anything. It was subsidizing his son's destruction of everything Charles spent his life preparing to lead. Word from palace insiders suggests Charles made the decision calmly, but absolutely. No more security funding. No more legal cost coverage. No more emergency support when California income falls short of California expenses. Harry claimed independence. Now, according to sources, he would actually experience what independence costs without his father's secret financial safety net catching him every time he fell. And here's what allegedly cut deepest for Charles in making this decision. Sources claim he discovered Harry never actually thanked him for the support, never acknowledged the quiet assistance, never recognized that his father had been protecting him financially while Harry publicly attacked his father's character, his institution, his family, his life's work. According to insiders, Charles had been funding the very platform Harry used to damage the monarchy. And that recognition apparently transformed Charles's paternal protection into paternal accountability that could no longer be postponed. As news of Charles's financial cutoff spread through royal circles, reactions revealed the different philosophies dividing the family into opposing camps. How did palace power players respond when they learned the king stopped funding Harry? Inside Buckingham Palace, sources say there was quiet relief among senior advisors who had been arguing for this outcome for years. These are the voices who allegedly argued consistently that Charles's secret support enabled Harry's worst behavior without consequence. That continuing to fund someone who publicly attacks the institution creates moral hazard that damages everyone involved. That Harry would never mature financially or emotionally while his father quietly covered the consequences of his choices without demanding accountability. According to palace insiders, these advisors view Charles's decision as overdue accountability that should have come years earlier when the pattern first became clear. They reportedly believe Harry needs to face financial reality without royal safety nets to understand what he actually sacrificed by leaving and what he lost by burning every bridge on his way out. Prince William's reaction is allegedly more complex and more emotionally conflicted. Word from those close to the Prince of Wales suggests William supports the financial cutoff intellectually but struggles with it emotionally as a brother. He reportedly understands that enabling Harry creates dependency and resentment that benefits no one. But according to sources, William also grieves watching his brother face financial consequences that could have been avoided entirely if Harry had simply listened to early warnings about sustainability and made different choices. Insiders claim William sees this moment as the inevitable result of Harry's refusal to accept reality. And that realization brings William no satisfaction whatsoever. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla's position is reportedly the most pragmatic and clear-sighted. Sources close to the Queen Consort suggest Camilla has argued consistently that Charles cannot protect Harry from consequences indefinitely without damaging himself and the institution. That a father who continues funding his son's attacks on the family is not protecting the son, but damaging the institution that employs thousands and represents the nation. According to insiders, Camilla allegedly framed the decision not as punishment, but as boundary setting that healthy relationships require and unhealthy relationships destroy. And in California, word from sources close to the Sussexes suggests Harry is in complete shock. That he allegedly never imagined his father would actually cut him off completely. That he apparently believed the quiet financial support would continue indefinitely regardless of what Harry said or did publicly. People familiar with Harry's reaction claim he feels betrayed by Charles stopping the support. But according to palace sources, Harry never acknowledged receiving that support in the first place. And that disconnect apparently makes this moment even more painful for everyone involved. But here's what most people don't know. What specific financial support has Charles allegedly been providing that Harry now loses? The revelations paint a picture of dependency Harry never disclosed and may not have fully understood himself. The first element involves security costs that dwarf normal expenses. According to sources familiar with Sussex security arrangements, Harry's demanded level of protection costs far more than his disclosed income could support even in the best months. And while Harry publicly fought the British government over security provision in expensive court battles, palace insiders claim Charles was allegedly quietly covering private security costs that allowed Harry to maintain protection he could not afford himself without help. The loss of that funding, sources suggest, means Harry must either dramatically reduce security to levels that terrify him or find new funding sources immediately or face the vulnerability he has always feared most. The second element is more extensive and more expensive. Multiple sources claim Charles allegedly covered legal fees for Harry's numerous tabloid lawsuits that have consumed years and millions. Not all of them. But according to insiders, Charles provided substantial support that allowed Harry to pursue comprehensive litigation he could never fund from his own resources alone. People familiar with the legal costs suggest Harry owes millions to law firms for ongoing cases that are far from resolution. And without Charles's alleged support, sources claim, Harry faces impossible choices about which battles to abandon because he cannot afford to fight them all simultaneously. The third element involves what palace sources describe as lifestyle subsidies that covered the gap between image and reality. According to insiders, Charles allegedly provided funds that covered gaps between Harry's expenses and income whenever the math stopped working. When mortgage payments exceeded what Netflix advances could sustain. When Montecito upkeep demanded more than sporadic projects generated. When emergency costs arose that Harry's cash flow could not accommodate without creating crisis. Palace sources claim Charles filled these gaps quietly and consistently, allowing Harry to maintain appearances without the financial reality matching the lifestyle the world witnessed. And the fourth element is what allegedly devastates Harry most completely. Word from sources suggests Charles has been covering costs related to the children that Harry assumed were simply handled. Security for Archie and Lilibet that goes beyond normal parental protection. Travel expenses when the children need to move with protective details that royal children require. Provisions that ensure Harry's children have resources their father's income could not guarantee alone. According to insiders, losing this support means Harry must either scale back his children's lifestyle or find alternative funding immediately. And that reality, sources claim, forces Harry to confront how dependent he has been on the institution he publicly rejects. To understand how Harry convinced himself his father's support would continue forever, you need to understand the advisors who reinforced that dangerous belief. So who told Harry the money would always be there? The first figure, according to sources, was someone in Harry's California circle who allegedly viewed Charles as an unlimited resource Harry could tap indefinitely without consequence. Insiders suggest this advisor convinced Harry that Charles would never cut him off completely because the king could not bear to watch his son struggle publicly. That paternal love and royal responsibility meant Harry's access to family funds was permanent regardless of his behavior or his attacks. People close to Harry's decision-making claim this advisor allegedly framed any suggestion that Charles might stop supporting as empty threat designed to control rather than genuine boundary. That the king had too much to lose reputationally by letting Harry face public financial crisis. And according to sources, Harry believed this assessment completely and planned his life accordingly. The second architect was allegedly Meghan herself, at least in Harry's interpretation of her expectations. Word from insiders suggests Harry believed Meghan expected him to maintain certain lifestyle standards that she had allegedly grown accustomed to expecting. That she allegedly required security, privacy, and luxury that Harry's income alone could never provide without supplementation. And according to sources, Harry convinced himself that accessing his father's support to meet Meghan's expectations was justified because the royal family owed him for the treatment he and Meghan endured. People familiar with Harry's mindset claim he allegedly viewed Charles's financial support not as gift, but as compensation for institutional failures and family betrayals. The third enabling voice was reportedly Harry's legal team, who benefited from unlimited spending. According to sources, attorneys handling Harry's multiple lawsuits allegedly encouraged continuing litigation without fully explaining that costs would exceed any realistic recovery by massive margins. Insiders suggest these lawyers benefited financially from Harry's willingness to spend unlimited resources on legal battles without questioning the math. And Harry, according to palace sources, apparently never questioned whether he could actually afford the comprehensive legal strategy he approved and expanded. These architects, sources claim, created an environment where Harry believed in financial independence while actually depending on supports he never acknowledged and apparently assumed would never end regardless of consequences. What makes King Charles's decision truly dangerous for Harry is the documentation the palace has allegedly maintained about every penny provided over years. Want to know what financial records the palace possesses that prove Harry's dependence? According to sources close to royal accounting, the palace has kept meticulous documentation of every payment made to support Harry since he left. Security expenditures with itemized breakdowns, legal fee payments with case-by-case accounting, lifestyle subsidies with dates and purposes, emergency funds with justifications, all allegedly recorded with dates, amounts, purposes, and recipients in files that could withstand legal scrutiny. Word from palace insiders suggests this documentation exists not to embarrass Harry publicly, but to protect the institution legally if questions arise. That if Harry ever claims the family abandoned him financially or left him vulnerable, palace lawyers allegedly have comprehensive proof that Charles supported him far beyond any obligation for years after Harry rejected royal duty and attacked the family. People familiar with these records claim they show a pattern of Charles protecting Harry from financial consequences, while Harry publicly attacked his father's character repeatedly. According to sources, the documentation reveals that Harry's California lifestyle was never sustainable on disclosed income alone, that Netflix deals and book advances covered fraction of actual expenses, and that Charles allegedly filled the gap continuously, quietly, allowing Harry to maintain the fiction of independence that his bank statements would prove was always an illusion funded by others. Insiders suggest Charles has no plans to release this documentation publicly or use it as weapon. But its existence reportedly gives the king leverage Harry does not fully appreciate or understand. That if Harry escalates attacks on family for cutting him off, palace sources claim, evidence exists proving Charles supported him generously far longer than Harry ever acknowledged or perhaps even realized he was receiving. And now we reach the final truth about what happens when you build independence on someone else's money. How does a prince survive when the funding he never acknowledged suddenly disappears? Harry stands in California, reportedly facing financial crisis that his own choices created, but his father's support postponed for years. According to sources close to the situation, he must now actually live on the income he generates rather than the lifestyle his father quietly funded without recognition or gratitude. Word from insiders suggests Harry has three impossible options before him: dramatically reduce his lifestyle and admit California dream was unsustainable from the start, find new funding sources that compromise the independence he claimed to value above all else, or reconcile with the family and acknowledge he needed their support all along. Those familiar with Harry's psychology claim he cannot easily choose any of these paths without destroying part of his identity. Reducing lifestyle means admitting failure publicly. Finding alternative funding means new dependencies on people who may demand more than Charles ever did. Reconciliation means confessing he was wrong about everything and everyone. According to sources, Harry believed his father's support proved Charles still loved him despite the public attacks and betrayals. That the quiet money was Charles's way of maintaining connection even through conflict that tore them apart. And now, insiders suggest Harry must face the possibility that Charles loved him enough to stop enabling behavior that was destroying them both. The documentation exists in palace vaults. The financial support has ended completely, and Harry must finally experience what independence actually costs when you are no longer being quietly subsidized by the institution you publicly reject and attack. Because in the end, every declaration of independence requires the resources to sustain it. And Harry's resources, according to palace sources, were never his own. They were his father's gift, given quietly without condition, taken for granted without acknowledgement, and now withdrawn because true love sometimes means letting someone face consequences rather than continuing to fund their delusions. King Charles has made his choice. The money has stopped flowing, and Prince Harry must finally discover whether he can actually afford the independence he claimed to achieve years ago. Subscribe to our channel Palace Unfiltered for more such news. Thanks for watching.